However, there's a couple of things I just wanted to say. That song in particular has been really challenging to me for a long time, because it's about stepping outside of your comfort zone, but bearing in mind that actually God's always going to be with you. I was listening to some worship earlier this morning, and it was a song which said, "I am not alone." And it was kind of sort of quite prophetic, really, because actually when you stand up here, if you're not a gifted speaker or talker like some of you guys here, it's actually really nervy and isolating in some respects, like this. So it was great confidence. I hopefully can stand here this morning saying, "I'm not alone." So when Christ stretched out his hands, right, that's to bridge the gap, okay, is that he made sure that we're not alone. You're not alone, neither of you. So wherever you are at this particular moment, in your head, or whatever space it is that you're struggling with, just remember you are not alone. So that was that. The second bit is as I know it's going to be hard for you to believe, but in January the 5th is that I'm going to be 60 years of age.
No.
I'm amazed I've made it this far, to be honest. Yes, thanks, Rich. You just said only 60. Okay. Well, it's somebody else's birthday this year as well, isn't it, Rich?
Yeah,
and a few others. So, and the reason I'm mentioning it now is that because it falls on Saturday, okay, my birthday, is that I've actually booked the brewery. Okay, and so what will be, there will be some invites which Helen is hopefully going to help me to sort out. I'll be sending some invites out for people to just say yes, they want to come to it, or no, they won't.
Yes, I want to come to it.
My son Scott and his group, the Rogues, will be playing there. So they play quite an eclectic list of music. Right, okay, onwards.
So,
I'm conscious
dear,
of the time.
are you telling them or are you inviting them?
Well, both. Okay, thank you. So, it's good to have somebody with you. I'm not alone. Okay. Also, it's a giving day today, isn't it? So there were three things that Andrew spoke about last week, which was Paul and Jane and the family supporting their work in Mozambique that we're looking to give into, the intergenerational missioner, or as we know, Wayne, and mission opportunities. So the table, for instance, and the cross-church family event. Is that kind of sort of? Now, as Andrew mentioned last week, that we're kind of sort of performing this double act. I sometimes feel it's like a bit of a bake-off type of thing, really. And some wag, Josh, and kindly said that it was more, not quite exactly a dynamic duo, but more like the Chuckle Brothers. So just to remind people what the Chuckle Brothers look like. And as you can see, we look nothing like them, fortunately.
Thank you. I don't know.
Right, next please, Josh. So I'm going to be looking back a little bit, and Andrew's going to be looking forward a bit more, hopefully, within the time allowed. If you keep questions to the end, that would be great, so that I have trouble enough with the flow. That's an age thing as well. So. That's an unfortunate reference. I'm trying not to make too long to this. When Andrew was talking about remembering last week, he didn't really know that I'd already been thinking about the AGM this year from a historical perspective, because lots happened over the last year and this year, and I think it's good to look back. It's good to look back at history, because history is inescapable, and what we learn from the past is that we look at in the future, and that helps us to influence, look at the present, and that helps us to influence the future. Recently, we had one of these smart meters on Friday put in at home, and I've got OCD on it, really. They are an absolute curse to somebody like me, because I'm watching this and I'm looking at this historical event and saying, you've used this much electricity, you've used this amount of gas, and it actually is then I'm saying, turn the light off, don't put so much water in the kettle, why is that heater gone on now? So already, that little part of history is starting to influence what it is that I'm thinking about planning on doing next. Ruth says that she's going to bury it somewhere.
I've had it since Friday. I put my hairdryer on, it cost me a penny.
But the thing about it is that it's really easy to dwell on the past, isn't it? And to stay there and live your life in that. And that's not what this is about, as Andrew will explain. Josh, yeah. 2001, what can anybody remember about 2001?
It was the year before I was born.
Thank you, Joe. Brilliant.
Shut up, Joe.
I started my new job,
You started your new job.
school.
Any other events that people can think of?
9/11.
It was a good year.
A good year.
It was a good year.
Okay.
Wasn't it the year of the mad cow disease as well?
There was lots of stuff going on. Gladiator came up, Russell Crowe. There was mouth. Foot and mouth. 9/11. Okay, which had incredible ripples throughout the world, and forever will that continue. But in a little backwater market town of Shropshire, there was a charity formed called Living Waters. Living Waters was set up as a trust back in 23rd of November, and it's a charitable trust which is quite easy in which to set up, but it does carry liabilities for the trustees. So anything that goes wrong is carried individually by the trustees. That's one of the downsides of it. But it actually is a lot easier to operate than other trusts at the moment, and it suits our particular needs. There are other ways of forming a charity, but for us at the moment, we don't employ anybody, so it's actually easiest for us to operate at the moment. We operate the trust with what's called a declaration of trust, which is a trust deed, which is the governing document. And these are basically rules that we have to abide by. So for some of you, you may think, oh God, this is really boring stuff. But for others, actually, it's an opportunity just to understand a little bit about who we are as a charity, as Living Waters. And so the governing document works as a rule book, and you see without me reading it out, those are the items that it basically covers. And then, because we're a trust in terms of assets, the only things that Living Waters Trust actually owns really are the speakers and music equipment, and also some PC and stuff like that. Sorry, Richard?
No, I think the speakers have got smaller over the years.
Yeah, but they're quite
They're
powerful.
aren't they?
Okay. So we don't actually own anything, we don't employ anyone, and all our finances are mainly contributory or tithed. And then we move on to the trustees. And back in 2001, there was a group of people, of which there was who set the trust up. And through that period of time is that seen an awful lot of changes. And coming into the sort of end of last year, coming into this year, there were four trustees. And I'm glad to see Caddy's here today, because Caddy was one of the founding trustees back in 2001. And he's sadly stepped down earlier on this year. So, and I think he served an immense amount of time for us in which to support what has happened, how the trust has grown in this time. So I think as he's here, Caddy. So thank you for that. The remaining trustees at this particular point are... I wasn't going to do this scene, but I couldn't resist. So Mrs. Johnson, who also operates as treasurer. Unmistakable my Meads, who sadly is not here with us today. And yours truly. Yes, I know it looks like a little girl, but...
Are you on the left or the right?
Use the drink The trustees also often carry different roles. So, as I've already mentioned, Sue, as a trustee, is also treasurer. Mike and I sit on the leadership team. Caddy was also the safeguarding coordinator, and when he stepped down from trustees, he also stepped away from that. And one of the things I'm glad is that, if you don't know, is that Ruth has stepped into that position as safeguarding coordinator now, along with Beth Stoner, who's not here today. Ruth has a lot of experience within the safeguarding team at her school at the moment, don't you, dear?
Yes, I do.
I won't say what I know.
No.
Okay, so one of the other things that within the trustees is that because we're moving forward at quite a pace now, is that also I've written a document with the help of other people that will actually help to understand the specific role of the trustee within Living Waters and the relationship that it has in particular with the leadership team. So understanding that the trustee role is about governance and it's not about operational side of it. So let's just have a quick look at what we've been doing. So as you can see, there'll be a theme that you will see on the right-hand side which keeps coming up, which is the icons and buttons that we use: share and pray, connect and learn. And that's visually quite helpful for me. So on the share and pray side of it, we conduct worship services, both on Sundays and sometimes other times when it's appropriate which to do so. And this is an area where we can have teaching, we can gather together, very much as we're doing today, with the exceptions of the AGM. And then one of the other areas that where we share and pray is, of course, is in Simple Church. And we've been trying to model this on for quite a while now, where it's an area where that we can talk about everyday things, we can support each other, we can get together and share a meal. And as the earliest followers of Jesus were so accustomed to, it was about sitting down and sharing life together around a meal. And this was the intention of Simple Churches. As some of you have experienced in Simple Churches, that actually sharing meals with a large group of people is a lot more difficult than it might seem. But we're quite happy to share drinks and cakes and nibbles and stuff like that. Simple Church is an outpouring of who Christ really is in a smaller group where we can really explore what it means to follow Jesus and to understand his life and ours, and to share that together and to pray together and help each other and encourage each other, where often we find ourselves in difficulties. Connect. Okay, so anybody not been to Cafe Church or know a lot about Cafe Church? Good, that makes that easy. So the areas that we've been involved in are Cafe Church, Acts 2 teams, and Sue goes to. Sue Needs has been quite involved in this, and the Acts 2 teams go into various schools. It's a cross-nation, it's a cross-country thing, isn't it?
Open the book now.
Open the book, which is called there. And goes in and into various schools and carries out assemblies. So we know that because it's continuing at the moment, it's been positively received and continues to be so. Then we've got churches together. Living Waters is happy to be part and privileged to be part of this group, working together to seek to encourage others to find God in their lives, supporting the poor and marginalised here and wherever it needs to be. The representatives of that now are
Ben and me.
okay, Ben and it's very brave. Okay, Thailand and Hans. We've got Rebecca and Dave here, and Carol sitting at the back. So if you've got anything that you want to talk about Hans that you don't already know about, and the trust continues to give financial support to some of the key workers there who are engaged. Hans are engaged in the relief of poverty and modelling the tenets of the Christian faith in the northern part of the country. Their primary work enables the provision of basic supplies to displaced people, assistance with education costs for at-risk children, community projects, and provision of funds to improve living conditions. I've just summarised that very quickly, but I think actually Okay, it's an opportunity if you want to explore further what it is, the work that they do, to speak to them after. Then we have Mary's Meals, which we've had the opportunity to be part of that and helping to set up a kitchen in Malawi, thank you. And we have an ambassador of Mary's Meals here, which is Sue Johnson as well. So not a trustee, treasurer, ambassador. So Sue has a busy life. And if there is anything else that you would like to know about Mary's Meals that you don't already know about, please have a word with Sue after. And then we have Mission in the Community, Little Angels and Forever Church. These are areas that we've not actually set up, but we have had people who have been involved in. So it's just something that marks connectedness between us and what else is going on in the town. And then we look at mission, and that's a nice big heading, but back in 2017... Sorry, Karen.
Can we go back to Forever Church? What's that?
Forever Church was a cross church incentive in which was to provide worship services for carers and those suffering with dementia. Sadly, it's been ongoing for some time. Not sadly, it's been ongoing, but sadly, it looks as though it's going to come to an end, my understanding, but a question mark at the moment. Beth Stoner was involved in that, and Beth's sadly not here today, in which to perhaps ask her about more of that. And then we move on to Mission and Community. It was the easiest way to describe this is that it had taken about 3 years of discussion, meetings, and various levels of correspondence to get to a draft of the Bishop's Missional Order. That really rolls off the tongue. So BMO, okay, not to be confused with other shortening of that. BMO is a framework. I had to read this. The BMO is a framework or vehicle that allows the Church of England and a third party, such as Living Waters Church, okay, to partner and develop, and encouraging a hybrid vitality, yet still respecting our different traditions. In other words, it's a legal document that allows us to work with them in a nutshell, and that then being St. John's, really. Yeah. The context of that agreement is for a shared commitment to life discipleship, mobilising our respective congregations into mission, sharing resources and skills, people, finance and facilities. Now, Mike Leeds and Andy in particular have been very prominent in what's been going on there. So if you'd like to know more about it that you haven't already heard in the past from Mike or Andrew, then please have a chat to them. Learn. We've also Living Waters. I should put this. We provide a couple of courses at the moment. So Journeys, if you don't know this already, is a 5-week course for people observers, curious or looking into the Christian faith and want to know more about it. So it operates through talks and DVD. People will hear real, down-to-earth stories about discovering faith in God. Footsteps, being an 8-week course designed as an introduction to following Jesus, it's an opportunity to explore some of the key themes of the Christian faith in an informal, relaxed atmosphere. And then, although it wasn't in 2017, but certainly at the beginning of 2018, there was churches working together basically to produce a community-wide alpha course, which I understand ran very successfully, and something that we'll be looking at in the future as well for that. Volunteers. Living Waters can't function without a massive network of volunteers. There's a lot of volunteers who are here today, and all of these people who there are various roles within the church that people sit behind, and we don't see them very often, whether it be Josh operating the slide or people, Addy doing the coffee, the teas and coffees. There's just a whole raft of people who sit to make this go. And I think it's appropriate at this time is just to recognise the time that people give, both in money and resources, in what is often busy lives, and just to say thank you to those volunteers that actually make this happen. So can we just put our hands together, even if you're a volunteer, so clap yourself. Okay, 2017. So these are the unaudited accounts that were submitted to the Charity Commission. We've simplified them because otherwise it can get really complicated and we can slip too much into detail. So, as you can see, is that there was an over-expenditure during 2017, which still left us with a healthy balance in the cash at bank. And the result of this is that when we were talking earlier about looking back at history, and so that we can develop and going forward, is that the result of this was that when we set the budget for 2018, is that we had to implement a cut in some of the giving services that we provide for some of the people who we give to at the moment. This isn't to say that this was a particular issue, because one of the things that we find is that giving is fluid, really, in terms of that we try and budget on an annual basis of what we think is going to come in, but it doesn't exclude the exceptions of sometimes people give more, sometimes people give less, sometimes people leave the church, so obviously there's a giving, there's a shortage. But we try and monitor this process and ensure that the commitments that we have made to the people that we are giving to, okay, is that flow is not interrupted. So we had a good cash reserve at the beginning of 2017, which allowed us in which to dip into that, in which to make the payment. So when we go on to 2018 and 2019, 2018, this is a budget still, and we amended that in which to suit what was happening from 2017. So we'll be reporting the final account details next year, being obviously historical, but at the moment that we have a healthy balance of some £12,000 sitting in the bank, which is demonstrating that giving is up, okay, and that this will allow us to then look to 2019 with a greater expectation and with a much more positive mindset of being able to do more of the things that we as a church are looking at, and certainly in terms of how the vision team are carrying that very much mission-orientated package forward. Okay, so for once, this is a very short kind of sort of package, because I appreciate Andrew has got much more exciting information.
I don't know, it is more exciting, I think it's quite exciting.
Okay, before I hand out, if you just put the next slide up, okay. I found this slide, and I was going to pass this on to Andrew now.
Great, thank you.
For some of you, you might see this as that okay, barbecuing, beer, something with it, type of thing. But actually, I look at this as celebrating what Andrew has been given from God in terms of fanning the coals and embers of mission and vision. Or am I just strange in that respect? But he's happy anyway.
Beer.
Okay. If there are any questions, I'll try and answer them, or otherwise you can keep them to the end and come and see me, and what we can't answer, we'll get the information to you.
Is that the cat's garden?
It is.
That's the important question.
That's great, Jack. Yeah, keep them like that.
Reviving the dead. Well, when Cad makes a barbecue, he really doesn't like it.
Is that a giant fire
Okay, so I'm going to pass over to Andrew then now, and just thanks for putting up with me.
Great, thank you, Tufty. That's good. I'm not sure that it's more exciting, this particular bit, but what we decided to do together was to look forward and backward and forward, and we were thinking particularly about the kind of history informing the future, and really what that means. And when we think about as an AGM, one of the things that we're really thinking about is the financial resource and where that's been applied. Those are sort of the key questions. So that's governed by the decisions that are made here. It's governed by the decisions that are made in the leadership, and also the initiatives that are happening around in the churches around us, and our partnership with them. And it's also governed significantly by the generosity of people here, and really what passions and values we share together. So one of the things that I wanted to do was to just think about where we're headed, because being clear about that is I think really important when we've kind of looked back and looked at the really wise stewardship that the trustees have applied to things over the last few years, because we've had quite a shifting level of income and a level of commitment to giving in specific areas which we needed to balance. So there's been some good conversations between the leadership team and the trustees around how we handle that. But we are living in a new season. Again, I put this up from the slide back in July where we had our vision day and really tried to describe some of the changes that we have been in and are continuing to be in. So this is a leaf that Sue drew for me for my birthday when we were, it's sort of a couple of years ago now, but when we were thinking, the word or the phrase "the new season" was being discussed a fair bit, and so she drew that, and I've just sort of kept it really as an aid for my memory that we are in this season, and actually it's really important to take account of that. So what are the things that that means when we think about our journey ahead and where we come from? What are we trying to do? Well, bottom line is we're trying to follow Jesus. That's, it's not hard. I had a conversation with somebody just in the last week actually, and he'd gone to a leadership conference, and they had people there from the States and from South Africa and people from the UK, and he said he's just in his early 50s, and he was describing the environment. It was a big stadium event, not stadium, but big hall. They had smoke machines and light shows and all the rest of it. And he's going, I looked around the room, I was trying to figure out who this was for. The bunch of us that were there, they were, we were mostly middle-aged, mostly middle-aged white men, actually, sadly. But what he was challenged with, what's being presented? What do we reckon success is about? What do we value when we think about what church is and where Jesus is taking his church? And what was coming across? And he wasn't undermining it in any way, but he was saying, the slickness of the big thing is one of the things that's sort of almost being presented as this is what it looks like to have success. If you do this stuff well, then that's really it. So, I mean, we love receiving songs from guys like Bethel and Hillsongs and all that. That's fantastic, aren't they? Just real amazing things happen out of some of these big churches. HTB, Alpha, and what comes out of their network of churches, fantastic. But I'm not sure that that's how we measure. I'm pretty sure it's not how God measures. And so I'm asking the question, what is it that's at the core that we need to really be accountable for in terms of our response, our giving, our resourcing? What are we called to do? And it's that we follow Jesus and that we do it together. And Jesus, what does that mean? What does it mean? What are the things that that means? And that's really the challenge, I guess, that I'm wanting to personally wrestle with. You see, we've just looked at finances. I wonder if we looked at emotions. I wonder if we looked at spiritual depth. I wonder if we looked at relationships. I wonder if we looked at growing in spiritual gifts. I wonder if our AGMs should be about, actually, we are on this journey. We are together pursuing the Spirit of God as he moves us forward. There is a plan and a purpose that God has. And in our own little simple way, without smoke machines and flashy lights, what we're trying to do is pursue that. And the habits, the really basic habits that involves prayer, connection with one another, engagement with God's word in some way. What are the things, really simple habits? Now, these haven't changed from forever. They're still the same things. You read about it in the New Testament. Acts 2, They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching, to the breaking of bread, to prayer and to shared life. As they were doing that, the apostles performed a number of mighty miracles, and daily those who were being added joined the church. That's what it is. That's what we are called to account for. So I'm not going to do that necessarily, because how do you measure? But those are the things that we should be measuring. So, what's going on? Why are we following God's footsteps? And in what are we following God's footsteps? Well, the things that God has been saying and moving, and the reasons why change in this last year particularly has been quite significant, is because we're trying to get ourselves in order to a new season of following Jesus in a new way, in this place, as us as a people. And the partnership for mission across the churches in the town is probably one of the significant drivers. Significant changes are coming because we're working together with Kelvin Price at the Anglican Church, with Cy Lambourne at the Baptist Church, with Dane Pritchard now, previously with Tim Coles at Elim, with Kim Stillwell over at the Methodist Church. These guys are wanting to reach the town. Their question is, how does the kingdom of God come more fully here? And how do we engage with that? How do we engage more of our own congregations in carrying that mission? And how do we do it well? Those are the questions that we are asking. So one of the things that we recently committed to do together is to spend an hour a week praying together. So I know that lots and lots of leaders groups across the nations do that kind of a thing, but that's a significant new step, which I think is a healthy one. So there's more things to come out of that. We are looking at doing more together. Those of you who go and visit St John's next week will see the work that they're doing in that building, and think about there are some new designs about what. So they're not as grand as those that are pinned on the back there of the development of St John's. They're a little more scaled down, but looking at trying to create a community-based space in that building that can be used as a base for mission. And we're invited to be part of it, significant partners in it. Okay, I'm coming back. Jeremiah 29. We spent a good number of months on that, and really not in 2017-18, and really wanted to ask the question: what are the habits, simple habits of the faithful people of God? And they are really simple. And we're going to kick off in the new year, just reminding ourselves of what those 6 habits are, because to a large extent, what we've been doing is living in those habits, and then more intentionally creating spaces and patterns where we step into them more fully. And so, build houses, settle down, a habit of community, plant gardens, and eat what comes in the habit of vocation, and being clear about that, the habit of multiplication, of having children, encouraging them to marry and have children, of knowing our confession, a habit of confession that God is good and He's got a plan and a hope for us, and finally the habit of presence. Well, these are simple things, they're not new to us, but it's a helpful reminder that this is what we're here for. It's what it means to be a church. These are the things that we are called to value. And at our core, our culture, the reality of our lives together is to express these things. Not measure anything else, really. These are the bottom lines. So, what's been happening over the last year, certainly from my perspective, is that there is a growing sense of engagement. It would be really, really fantastic. You know the 80-20 rule? You know that kind of rule in organisations, 80-20, 20% of people do 80% of the work sort of thing? It would be really great to break the reality of that. And we are beginning to. Growing levels of engagement. More and more people taking part and shaping what we're doing here, and leading and serving and generating kind of new possibilities and new contexts. It's just fantastic. And we want to see that continue. Mission and discipleship really being the heart of what the journey that we've been on. And as we've stepped into looking for more opportunities to express what God has given us and to reach out with that, and to be people who are known for following Jesus. That's my kind of ambition, really. if that's the measure, that'd be good. I'd really like to see that. Okay. So where are we at? Well, we had this sort of situation back in July where the kind of main expression of things that we were doing physically out there was Cafe Church, and we were that was sort of an extension for us of Gateway that was open in the high street, and that's been really exciting to see. But where are we headed? Well, this is what we kind of talked about in July, that there be a different level of partnership together with the other churches in the town. And that orbiting around that would be new initiatives partnering together, new and existing initiatives. So we talked about Young Family Service and Debt Advice, talked about ALF that we ran last year and will be running again in February, talked about initiatives to do street teams, and also Cafe Church and other things, Forever Church, other things that are in there already. So that was the sort of stated aim and where we might be headed in 5 years' time. So, and we talked about changing the way that we're sort of shaped and what that really looks like. So this is, if you like, organisationally, the changes that we made or are making. And so these 4 teams now are beginning to come together and define the roles. People are taking part in them, shaping them, and by the end of January, so in early February, these teams will be carrying those initiatives. So the learning team will be responsible for shaping the learning that we're doing. So that it won't be planned by me or whoever else. It's actually going to be planned by that team, and people will be engaging in that. Worship as a team rather than as a rota of 3 or 4 different worship leaders who just take it in turns is a different dynamic, a new one that is going to be taking responsibility for moving things forward in February. Caring connection and developing what that really looks like for us, developing new simple church environments, developing small prayer groups, or all of those things coming out of that group and those taking responsibility. And then a team of people or a group of people who have got specific roles that just help us do what we need to do. So trustees, treasurers, operationally are in that group, I suppose. But also things like people who are doing the newsletter, people who are doing the videoing, people who are running administratively the things that we need to do. Okay. So where are we at? We talked about as well, launching new mission initiatives, missional communities, and the first one is just begun really, just underway. So the kitchen's been meeting just for a couple of months now. One of the big outcomes or outputs of the kitchen is this event, this cross-church event that we're doing called The Table, which is a family service running at Elim on the second Sunday of the month from 3 till 5. So far we have managed to serve about, I don't know how many plates
200
of food.
sausages.
200 sausages and relatively significant amounts of mash, beans and peas. So it's been great. You can flick on to the next one, I think. We've got, so across that, so we started this like 2 months ago, and across those 2 events there's been 40 new adults and children who are not connected with the churches come and be a part of that. Now, what do you measure? Measure relationship, we measure connection, we measure the light shining into people's lives, we measure, opportunity for sharing the good news, for praying with people, for, just talking about the fact that, Jesus is the light of the world, which is one of the themes that we've been focusing on. Fantastic. So we've had a really good time with that cross-church team moving that event forward. And then in the kitchen, we just had a few shared meals, the core team praying together weekly, and we've had the opportunity to speak into and pray for a couple of the families who are connecting in this way. So, what next? Okay, so this is now really sort of looking forward to 2019. What are the things that we're looking to build on as we go forward? So one of the habits that I talked about was that of building community, build houses, settle down, the habit of community. One of the things that we have talked about a lot is simple churches. and what they're there for. What we're trying to do in those is to encourage environments where people really just come together. Now, it's different dynamic, isn't it? Because when you invite your friends to come for a meal, you can have a Jesus-centered time, and that's really great. Sometimes it's just special, really, really exciting. And I have had conversations with people who are kind of no longer in church, friends of ours who live down in Southampton, and a couple of other people as well, who they really value that now. That coming together with friends who are like-minded, who are not anymore in church kind of contexts. They're not connected into a congregational context anymore. The thing that they value is this close fellowship, and that they can share life together. And I'm going, yeah, absolutely, that's really good. That's really, really good. And is it open? And do you have people that you don't like sitting down around the table with you? Or is it just friends? Because when Jesus talks about table fellowship, it's got a whole different meaning. And so when we talk about simple church, we're talking about uncomfortable rather than comfortable. But we're talking about commitment to a community, commitment to connection, to depth, to sharing. We're talking about an environment where that's different from what my friend describes when he talks about having a meal together with friends. It's different. His is easy and good. Don't get me wrong. It's good that you do that. It's good that we have friends that we get together with. But Jesus' table fellowship wasn't like that. It wasn't just that. And that's what we're wanting to see go forward. We are building for the future because God is doing something in this town which will mean a significant increase in numbers of people following Jesus. Significant increase in numbers of people asking questions of Jesus, of God, as to how their lives can turn around. We're going to need to grow the capacity of caring and connecting because we're going to need to connect more people into relationship. So we're deliberately in 2019 going to be opening up new simple church contexts and wanting to see opportunities for people to engage with it. So everybody who wants to will have a space that they can connect into in relatively easy ways. And similarly with prayer groups, similarly with a context where you can really go deep with one another and engage with your own spiritual health and your following of Jesus with other people who are cheering you on and challenging you at the same time. When we got together as leaders in the town about three or 4 weeks ago, as we were talking through and praying about what should be the priorities for next year for us as church leaders and for our congregations because of that, prayer was the one thing that came to the top of the list. So we committed immediately to this 1 hour of prayer a week together, but also to say, okay, how do we raise that profile in the town? So one of the things that we're going to do is have an event at St. Lawrence's Friday, the evening of Friday, February the 1st, which is basically a Prayer for Ludlow evening. And we'll have the opportunity to shape that from really what we understand that sort of prayer should be about and like, but it's going to be a partnership. It's going to be across those churches, really kind of inviting people to do that. So it should be a really good time, but it's the first of a number as we kind of move forward, I think, and other initiatives out of which might grow teams of people who are going out on the streets or engaging people in the community, particularly in the area of praying for them. Alpha starts again in February 2019. I think we've decided to shorten it. It's not a 12-week course now, but ideally an 8-week course. But again, that's across the churches working on that. And then our second mission initiative, the prayer and preparation for that, we want to sort of start thinking about what that might be more seriously in a more deep way in March 2019. So, what's it going to mean together? What do we do? What does it look like to follow Jesus? What does it mean to be part of Living Waters as a community? Well, in 2019, these are the priorities. And they're not massively different from the 2018 priorities or the 2001 priorities. We want to pray. We want to really be prayerful in what we're doing, responsive to God. We want to hear Him and follow. We want to understand what He's saying to us as individuals and as a community of people, and to obey it. It's as simple as that. That's what it means to pray and follow God together. So, giving our time, our energy, our money, our lives to see God's kingdom come in Ludlow is really the priority. And we've got some practical kind of information around that in terms of the things that we're going to be doing, but we are really asking people to sort of do that together, to think about what it means for them individually in 2019 as part of this extended family to follow Jesus together. What are the habits that you really want to engage in? What are the things that you want to prioritise? How do you want to spend your time and spend your money and spend your gifts and spend your energy? Okay, it's a gift day. Tufty's already highlighted that what we wanted to do was to prioritise 3 things, and when I talked about it, Heather reminded us that it's a lot easier for trustees to allocate money if it's not specifically designated. So if you write on one of these envelopes that it's for Wayne, it needs to go to Wayne, or he's an intergenerational missionary anyway. If you write gift day, then it can be allocated to one of those 3 priorities. But I'd love just to grab an envelope and take it away with you, or put some money in it, or actually the other thing is to just write on a piece of paper, which I haven't got a notebook, unfortunately I forgot to bring one, but everybody just who wants to sort of pledge it, that this is what they'd like to give towards one of those 3, or those 3 initiatives together today. That would be really, really good. So take an envelope and either take it home with you and use it for whatever purposes that you like, or give it back to Tufty or Sarah at the end with a note in it, or money in it, or whatever. Okay, so I'll just take it. That's one off. Great. Okay, you're going to come and sing.